I've put this off long enough, but it's time to get some of that holy grail of XPS foam. Ah, there it is, Foamular 150. You know it's the stuff because it's labeled with everyone's favorite 150th Pokemon.
It's Mewtwo!
Luckily I brought a blade to fit all this foam in my trunk. Oh hey studs, it's flu season again, so before you catch Pokerus or something worse, why not grab a tissue to help your nose pass all that muck? Oh, looks like Tissue Box just evolved into a Sword and Shield Pokemon Center. So if you feel that coughing coming on, cover that Meowth or that SNEASEL getcha. But this Tissue Box isn't just for catching Lugias, it also doubles as a 28mm scale Pokemon Center for your tabletop adventures as well.
Wonderful!
Hey everyone, hope you're well. We'll start out this project by slicing out the Tissue Box shell using 1-inch XPS foam. Slice carefully, it's okay to be a slowpoke for a cleaner and safer cut. Just take it nice and slow, bro. For the angled roof, I'm slicing a 45-degree angled side cut, then doing the same for each of the walls, so go grab a scythe or any knife you want. Each of the angled cuts come together at a corner using hot glue, just a squirt will be enough. My cuts were real jagged, so let's hone edges by sanding the slashes. Make sure you wear your mask so you don't breathe in any cancer dust. You like my new gloves? They came with this cool piece of thick cardstock, and you better believe it's going to be the top of the tissue box. I'm cutting out a tissue hole, then gluing it from the secret underside, making all the basic polygons of the box complete. Alright, time for a brick break. I'm using an X-Acto knife to gently mark rows of shallow cuts, then going back over each line with a pencil to engrave some deeper details. Hand drawing 700 bricks takes a while, so if you need to smash the skull against a wall from all the tedium, make sure it's this foam wall. For extra brick texture, I'm using a balled up piece of aluminum foil from my last batch of chicken tendies. Some might call this metal gross if it's covered in food residue, but I licky-tongued it clean. For the roof's awning, let's glue multiple foam strips around the perimeter, then round out the corners with a blade. I really can't stress this enough, but I love disc corrugated paper. I'm using strips of it to mimic the ridged trim from the actual Pokemon Center, then doing this advanced, subtle knife maneuver to carefully bend the paper around the corners. Score the paper as lightly as you can so the ridges don't flatten when you wheedle them over the curve. Using some of this 2mm craft foam, I'm slicing a couple snakes to use as extra ridge detail around the roof awning, which I'm securing with hot glue. For the wood details, I'm using sheets of real balsa wood, but you could also use foam and engrave some wood grain to make some pseudo wood instead if you wanted to. Next, we definitely need a chimney so the smoke can join the smog on the outside. I'm laying foam brick all over a layer of moist glue, then trimming off the overhang after it dries. For the two little blowholes, I'm breaking down a piece of an old pump bottle, then pouring hot glue down the spout to secure it in place. Here's a scrafty tip: always use reference when you craft. I like to start with a big ol' Google of all pics I can find before I actually start building anything. Okay, windows and doors. We need windows in a building, but we also need door in a building. This is so dumb. I guess you want to hear about this door. This door is made of wood. I cut a bunch of wood pieces out, then I glued them to this little cardboard template I made. I will say that balsa wood is extremely fragile. I broke this thing a couple times while handling it, and I cried. It was pretty easy to repair with glue though, so I didn't really beat myself up too hard about it. For the roof tiles, I was considering laying each tile one by one, then I realized that I could just engrave lines on cardstock instead, and no one would be able to tell that I'm slacking. Don't work harder, work smarter. If you go lurking through your trubbish, I'm sure you have some of these plastic caps like this if you dig. Let your hands become one with the trash. The tip of the iceberg might not be enough because sometimes that good stuff will hide from you. Beware though that you may end up having a faint garb odor, but think of all the money you'll save. For the windows, I'm using some chunks of this dollar store cutting mat, then gluing on a bunch of coffee stirring stick segments as the window grills. I also made a couple planter boxes using extra scraps of foam using the same brick technique from earlier. Time to add a shell to some of the foam. I'm using watered down modeling paste to add a bit of a stucco texture to the front facade of the building, as well as the roof tiles. After the shell has become bone dry, it's time to seal the whole thing in a Doduo mixture of matte Mod Podge and black acrylic paint. No fancy techniques required for this magic coat, just smeargle it all over. This will act like a shield on the foam when we spray paint it. After it's had time to harden, I primed the whole thing in white spray primer. After the white prime, we're following it up with dark right after to add some more shadows into all of the crevices and darker areas for a pre-shading effect. The goal here is for some of these tasty gradients to be retained after we throw our base coats over the top later. The roof tiles were the most important parts to pre-shade since there wasn't a lot of actual geometry and texture to catch paint, so the pre-shading will work to trick the eye. I'm trying not to go too heavy with the red here, so I want to retain a bit of the darkness in the shadows. Then for the roof tiles, I'm going back over the bottom edge of each tile with a light pink to act as a highlight. I'm using a tiny wedge of trash cardboard here so the paint doesn't go anywhere except tile lines. This is the most rewarding part here, pulling off all the masking tape. I didn't mess it up. Tricked ya. I really messed it up. I don't think I let the paint dry long enough. It's free weathering. To complement the Pokemon red of the tiles, I'm using Pokemon blue for the trim and then Pokemon gunmetal gray for some of these extra details. I'm using a nice off-white for the front. In this case, it's freshly pumped cream from Miltank, and then I'm mixing up a batch of reddish brown as a base coat for all of the bricks. I'd look like a huge Bidoof if I painted everything the same color, so I'm absolutely painting the occasional choice brick with additional shades of color to make these walls superior to your average wall. Then I'm finishing up the bricks with a bit of tan dry brushing to add some lighter contrast across each brick. Time to add a dark wash over all of the bricks with a little bit of Pledgy. I'm hydro pumping a few modest squirts, then mixing it up with a bit of black paint until it's pretty dark but not completely opaque. I'm blotting a bit on a paper towel just to test the darkness, but we don't want it to be so dark that it overpowers the color on the bricks. Then I'm abracadabbing up all the excess with a paper towel to make sure it doesn't collect and pool across the model.
Nice and grimy.
Off camera, I painted up the Pokeball made from trash, and now we get to start assembling everything and adding the finishing spices. For the banner detail on the front, I printed this out, then I'm soaking it in watered down Mod Podge to seal it down. For the door handles, I'm using the backs of a couple Garbo earrings, and then from the last video I have a bunch of these dollar store earbuds which I'm painting up to use as floating flower pots off the front of the building. We'll need some way to attach them to the front of the Pokémon Center, so we'll be drilling a couple holes. Speedrill, use G-Max torque! All it takes is a little spot of glue to attach these plant buds into their holes, and oop, that one's a little bit crooked, I'll fix it. These tiny pearl studs will make excellent lamps for the front of the Pokémon Center. I'm slicing out a small slit, and then with a dab of super glue, the lamp enters the crack and should hold just fine. Using a toothpick, I'm laying down a thin string shot of glue around the perimeter of each frame to glue the windows in place. Ooh, and as is my favorite in almost every episode, I love breaking out my grass nug stash so I can go flock myself with foliage flocking all over the model. Each of these nuggies get a light crop dusting of yellow fine turf to add a bit of a highlight where each plant would typically receive the majority of its solar beams. The last missing detail for the front is the Pokemon Center sign, which I'll start by chopping apart this plastic train trestle to make the metal mount the sign hangs from. And for the sign itself, it's just good old printed graphics soaked in watery Mod Podge sauce and sealed with a kiss to some chipboard and sliced out with an X-Acto knife. I painted the edges to match the color on the printout, and then to create the metal chain, I destroyed this safety pin and pinched a necklace chain link around the loop. You can use almost any pair of pincers to get the job done. Watch out for this incoming vine whip. This vine foliage can be stretched out to look like creeping ivy, and then with a bit of watered down glue, we can blast out some max overgrowth in a few select brick areas. It kind of crumbled on me as I was stretching it apart, but these extra bits are not wasted. Okay, I think that's every last detail. Is there anything missing? No, I don't think so.
Yes, there is one thing missing.
And that's that this video couldn't have been made without the support on Patreon. Thank you so much to the newest members who have joined the team, namely Hair Walness, Dylan S., Perfectly Plush Peach, Pierre Philippe Falcone, Brad Walker, Michelle Anius1, and Faith Chaffer. If you want to be the very best like no one ever was, check out my Patreon to peruse the offerings. I couldn't do this without the support there. My patrons are lovely and I wish I could pat them on the back. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know if you end up following this tutorial or if you like to mimic YouTube videos in general to make crafts. As always, let me know what you'd like to see crafted next. Y'all are good at dropping goldie in the comments, and I'm always seeking the best ideas. Thanks for sticking around through these unacceptable jokes, but I hope you have a sweet morning and a beautiful evening.